Have you ever felt like someone was watching you and turned around to find out you were right? That eerie sudden awareness that eyes are on you is something that most of us have felt. But here's the weird part. According to mainstream science, that shouldn't be possible. Science is currently dominated by materialism, the idea that everything you experience, your likes, your dislikes, your thoughts, your emotions, are the result of physical activity in your brain. When you see the world, for example, science assumes that you're seeing it entirely in your brain. But if that's true, how can you sense someone's stare? My name's Georgia. I have a master's degree in consciousness, spirituality and transpersonal psychology, and in my free time I love to research manifestation and the science behind shifting our reality. Now today we're going to be diving into something a little different, and we're going to be exploring a phenomenon known as scopaesthesia, aka the sense of being stared at. I'm currently working on a project about this with Rupert Sheldrake, who has an alternative view of how vision works, which might help better explain this phenomenon. So in this video, I'm going to talk a bit about the sense of being stared at and why it doesn't fit into the mainstream views regarding consciousness and how vision works, and I'm going to present to you Rupert Sheldrake's alternative view that could help explain it. So the sense of being stared at has everything to do with how our vision works. So let's start with exploring the conventional view of vision and why it might not make sense. So the dominant view of vision is intromission. It's basically the idea that light enters the eye from objects in the world. So intromission is this idea of this inward movement of influence. So the idea is that the brain receives these signals through the eyes and creates a 3D internal image. Now, obviously it's a lot more complicated than that. There's loads of processes going on within the eye and within the brain, but the basic idea is that there is this inward movement of influence, and the brain basically constructs an image from these signals that it is receiving. So the conventional view is that vision is a one-way process. There's nothing leaving the eye, it's all inwards and internal. But here's the odd part. Let's imagine that you are looking at a tree. If this version of vision is true, that it's all an internal process, then that tree that you are seeing isn't actually out there. You are seeing it entirely in your brain. You're seeing a reconstruction that is within the bounds of your skull. Let's look at another example. Let's imagine that you are looking at the night sky and you're looking at all of the stars. According to this theory of vision, those stars that you're looking at are a neural image inside your brain. You're not looking at the actual stars, you're seeing a reconstruction of them. And so, if we follow the logic of this, then this would mean that when you are looking at those stars, technically, your skull is beyond those stars, because that image is literally inside your brain, inside your skull. So this seems really bizarre. And it gets even weirder when we start to ask deeper questions about how this would work. For example, if we're seeing these images inside our brain, then what medium are we seeing them in? Surely those images aren't physically printed onto our brain. If they were, how would we even see them? It raises all of these really weird questions about how is that image occurring, what medium is it in? What form is that image taking? It's also worth questioning the fact that the way our retinas work is that they produce small and inverted images of the world we see. And so how do those inverted images turn into 3D images that we see that appear to be outside of ourselves? Why do we see that and not two small inverted images on our retina? Most theorists would assume that our brain produces some representation, but no one really understands how that would work. And as Velman's pointed out, if someone asked you to point towards a cat, then you wouldn't point towards your brain, you would point towards a cat that is outside of your physical body. Because everything we see in life appears to be outside of us, it's beyond our physical body, it's 3D. It feels very anti-intuitive to say that all of those images are somehow occurring just inside our brain. So this conventional theory of vision, called intromission, feels very passive and internal. It's kind of like the idea that a movie is playing inside your brain. And most people, I think, intuitively assume that what they are seeing actually coincides with the physical world around them. And so when you tell people this theory of vision, it doesn't feel very natural to them. So now that we understand the conventional theory of vision, let's go back to the sense of being stared at. Because despite this intromission theory, most people have had the experience of being watched. Either you've had the experience of feeling like someone's watching you and turning around to see that someone was in fact staring at you, or you've had the opposite experience where you've been staring at someone and they've turned around to notice. Most people can relate to this because most people have had either one of or both of those experiences. Now, this experience is known as scopaesthesia. It's the sense of being stared at. Now, the problem is, this phenomenon, which pretty much everyone has experienced, does not fit very well at all into the intromission theory of vision. Scopaesthesia is very difficult to explain when we assume that vision is only an inward, internal process. If vision is entirely internal, then it's a lot more difficult to explain how your stare could affect the world around you, because light is moving into the eye, but nothing is moving out. So how could somebody feel your stare? This is where Rupert Sheldrake's theory comes in, because Rupert offers an alternative view of the mind and of vision, in which vision isn't a one-way process. In addition to light entering the eye, Rupert also suggests that something moves outwards. So how does this work? What is it that is moving outwards? Rupert's idea is that the mind can extend beyond the brain through perceptual fields. So in this theory, the mind isn't confined to the brain and the inside of the skull. It can actually extend outwards. Now, this is Rupert's extended mind hypothesis. And the idea of fields projecting beyond material bodies isn't actually a new idea. We can look at magnetic fields, for instance, or electromagnetic fields, or the gravitational field of the Earth. So the idea of a field extending beyond a material body and having influence beyond that material body isn't new. What's new here is the idea of perceptual fields, which are a new type of field that Rupert is proposing, as well as the idea that the mind is something that can extend beyond the body. So Rupert's idea when it comes to vision is that when you look at something, your attention actually reaches that thing through perceptual fields. And so vision isn't only an inward process. In Rupert's theory, it also involves an outwards influence, and this is known as extramission, so it's the opposite of intromission. Except Rupert's theory includes both. It includes intromission and extramission. So there's both the inward influence of light entering the eye, but there's also an outward influence where the mind extends beyond the brain through these perceptual fields. So we still have our retinas, which take the signals from the outer environment and reduce that 3D image to a 2D image, and then Rupert suggests that our perceptual fields project that image back outwards and back into a 3D image. So our brain isn't just constructing an image inside our skull. The idea here is that these perceptual fields project virtual images back into 3 dimensions. So the implication of this is that what you are seeing isn't just a reconstruction that happens entirely inside your brain. Instead, the version of reality you are seeing extends out to where the objects actually are. So when you're looking at the stars, for example, that image you are seeing of the stars is where those stars actually are. So you are still technically seeing a perceptual image, but the images you are seeing are where the objects actually seem to be. So we could say that the images you're seeing are happening in your mind, but they're not physically happening in your brain. Under this theory, the sense of being stared at makes a lot more sense. If your mind can extend beyond the brain, then in theory your awareness can touch another person in some sense. The person may be able to sense or feel your stare because there's actually a real physical interaction happening between fields. And an interesting thing to point out here is that evidence suggests that scopaesthesia is directional. And so what this means is when people sense that they are being stared at, more often than not, they turn around to look directly at the person who was staring at them. It's like they can sense the direction that the stare is coming from, and you might have experienced this. Most often when you stare at someone and they turn around, they don't have to look all around to try and identify where the stare is coming from. Oftentimes they look straight at you just naturally. And this directionality makes sense in the context of an action being propagated through a field. So is the sense of being stared at real? Well, as I already said, most people have had the experience of this at some point in their life, either of sensing being stared at or of staring at someone and them turning around. However, there have also been a number of studies done which show that people consistently score above chance, which indicates that it is a real phenomenon. Though, of course, with any phenomenon that questions the dominating materialistic paradigm, we do need very strong evidence to convince people that this is real. And so this is what I'm working on Rupert Sheldrake with at the moment. I'll share more about that soon because we could do with your guys' help as well. But for now, I just want to emphasize just how extraordinary it is that this could really be happening, because if the mind really can extend beyond the brain and interact with reality, then this opens so many doors. This could mean that your intention can also interact with reality, and this would have huge implications for manifestation. It could also have implications for being able to heal people at a distance. So the sense of being stared at opens up lots of bigger questions. For example, can consciousness be non-local? We already know that quantum particles have non-local connections through quantum entanglement. Could consciousness also operate in a similar way? If it could, then this has other implications for phenomena such as telepathy. Another question would be, is the mind actually field-like? The current conventional understanding is that consciousness is a byproduct of brain activity. Though this has never been proved, all we know is that consciousness correlates to brain activity. And under this conventional materialistic view, then consciousness is confined to the inside of the skull, and so it can't have any effect on reality outside of it. But if the mind can extend beyond the brain through fields, then this drastically opens up how we understand consciousness and what it may be capable of doing. So let me know in the comments, have you ever experienced the sense of being stared at, and what do you think is happening here? Stay tuned into this channel if you want to get involved in testing the sense of being stared at. And for now, if you want to learn more crazy things about consciousness that challenge the materialistic paradigm, then you can watch this video here. For now, thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed, and I hope to see you in the next one.